The stock market is down, and we may still be in correction territory depending on the time that you are watching this video, which means that the stock market is down roughly 10%. And there are people that are throwing around the R word, which is recession. But here's the thing. If we are going to go into a recession, which we are not currently, what are the things that we should do to protect ourselves financially? Let's go ahead and break it down. There are, I would say, 5 things that you can do right now to get ready for a recession. And it is a phrase that I've been telling y'all about and that I live by. Stay ready so you ain't got to get ready. So here are my top 5 things. The first 2 are going to be obvious, and then it's going to go into things that you really don't talk enough about and are going to become, obviously, less obvious. So first one, yes, you should boost your emergency fund if you don't have one already, or if it's not bolstered enough. The basic advice, 3 to 6 months of your emergency, or 3 to 6 months of your expenses. I like to say 3 to 6 months of your rent or mortgage. Yes, it should be higher than that, but most people don't know what their expenses are every month. So start there, right? If your mortgage is $2,000, multiply times 6, you know what that is, right? Ta-da. Now, you should, if you feel like it's really going to be a recession, should go just a bit above that. The reason, and we'll talk more about this later this week, but the reason why I just haven't said yes, it's a recession, yes, it is or isn't, so on and so forth, because just because the stock market falls that's not the definition of a recession. Again, we'll get into the whole definition of that and what the odds are and so on and so forth. But bolster your emergency fund. And one of the other reasons as to why is not just, and when I don't root for recessions, it's not just because of job loss, which is a big part of it, but also you want to have a buffer between you and your investing account, because what some people do is, should they lose their income or their income just drops, let's say they lost hours at work or they are furloughed or there's a temporary job loss or something like that, they will pull from their investing accounts, and that could cost them an early withdrawal penalty in some cases. Sometimes it could cost them in taxes or what have you. They use that as their emergency fund, and those are dropping in value right now. That's not the best case, okay? So if we can let those recover, perhaps let's use cash right now where we don't have to pay and have all that kind of stuff happen. Just use that, and hopefully that will sustain us for long enough for things to improve, and let the stocks do what they do in the meantime. So that is one reason why I want to have it. Obviously, we can get to a lot faster and a whole bunch of other advantages. So bolster that savings, okay? If you want to go beyond that, especially in a time like this, you are more than welcome to. So that's number 1. Number 2, another one that I think is more obvious is, yes, pay down your debt, especially if it is high interest debt, things like credit cards. Attack those, attack them as much as you can and pay them down. One thing that I do in my own, I wouldn't call it a debt journey, because I've only paid interest one time. It was $20. I'm very upset about it. It was $20.15. I had credit cards since college, the day after I graduated college, so we're talking 2012, and it was because I misestimated. I paid off my credit card. I thought I did, and it was like I didn't pay off like $20 balance or whatever it was, and charge me interest on top of that. Anyway, what I do at the end of every week is every Saturday around 10:30, I sit down and see what I spent that week, and then pay off whatever, schedule a payment for everything I spent that week, and that's it. Or I will schedule a payment, and let's say I don't get paid, or I don't have money, or I don't have money coming in until, let's say, next Monday or something like that. I will add up everything that I spent, let's say $100, and then schedule it for next Friday, so that everything that was spent is going to get paid off for whenever that money comes in. So that everything is always accounted for by the end of the week, so that when the bill is due, everything is going to be at 0, and there will never be an interest charge so long as I make sure that I keep those appointments with myself. So that's just how I do it. Other people have their own methods, okay? So do what you got to do. Make sure those are paid off in full. No, it does not help your credit score to carry a balance. I don't care. I don't know who told y'all that. That is not the case. It does not help you to carry a balance on your credit card, right? It only helps the credit card companies make money off you. Don't let them make money off you. The other thing too, don't forget that Afterpay stuff will hurt you. make sure them Afterpay things are paid off too. Whatever it is, them little $20, $60, $80 payments that you paying off or whatever, and I'm not shading Afterpay or nothing like that, because some of those can be $0 interest, but in a time like this, where there could be a recession, you want to take care of any little, that does count as debt, you do want to take care of any little small debts and little interest payments, or any little, just subscriptions, all that stuff that's kind of nipping at your heels, nipping at your budget, and nipping at your bank account. Cut them all if you can, and if you do not need it, scrape it, right? And stuff as much as you can in your savings as possible. You'll be surprised if you don't have a program like Rocket Money or something. That's not an endorsement for me, but if you have a program that looks at all of these, feel free to look at it, or just look at your bank account. There are times where you might be surprised. Okay, so do that. Cut those and cut the interest, or cut those debts down if possible. Now, here's where things get a bit more interesting. Take a look at a calendar and look ahead. Look ahead and see if there's anything that you need to adjust or alter in your calendar for any events, birthdays, and things like that. In my personal life, for example, this year is my wife and I's 10-year anniversary. Now, part of this is my fault in that our birthday's in October, and perhaps I told y'all this before. Our birthday's in October, our wedding anniversary is in November, Thanksgiving is in November, and those two things are within, depending on the year, within 2 or 3 days apart. And then we obviously have the holiday season. Now those 4 things, yes, those are 4. I used to do this. But those 4 things are always quite expensive. And because it's our 10-year, we were going to do like this huge, I wouldn't say wasn't going to be a whole re-wedding. We're going to go back home, go back to my hometown, and do like this whole, like, let's get the Paskins, kind of do like a whole thing. And I was like, it might be a recession this year. Do we really want to fly us and the kids? That's 4 plane tickets now. Southwest not doing free bags, bruh. Okay, so do we really want to pay all that money just to redo this and then go on like a 10-year anniversary trip? That's a lot of money. Do we, looking ahead, right? Do we really want to do all that? What if we just kind of format this, and maybe we just do a trip, keep the kids at home, or something like that, and just rearrange this? Because what I don't want to do is we end up in a recession, the stock market's already down, and here we are going on this luxurious trip and spent a whole bunch of money. And it's like, I just don't know if this feels right. Let's rearrange this. And if there are some commitments that I can alter, then I'm absolutely going to do so. If there are some places I just don't want to go, this is a chance for me to get out of the house as well. And then let's move on to the next one. This is, don't touch your investments. It usually does not make sense, especially in a time when the market is down, to touch your investing accounts. We've talked a little bit about this before. The data suggests that when the market is down, and I've seen this happen before, we all saw it in 2020, people panic, people get scared, people withdraw from their 401ks, withdraw from their accounts, and go to cash. You usually don't want to do that, especially, as I mentioned earlier, paying taxes, paying penalties, paying fees, things like that. Now, I mentioned earlier doing so because they need to do it and they need the money. That's one thing, but just doing it in general to prevent yourself from doing it, sometimes just log out, just continue your dollar cost averaging and just mind your business, okay? Focus on paying down your debt, leave your investing accounts alone, and just let that do what it's going to do, provided that you're already in a good, balanced position. And if you're already investing in index funds, you're usually going to be in a very good spot. And then here's where things get interesting. You want to use inversion. Now, this is a tactic that Charlie Munger used. This was Warren Buffett's number 2, and we did talk about this in a video, I would say almost 2 weeks ago. You can check out that video here. But that is, take a look at the other things in your finances and in your life that could go wrong. Let's just narrow it down to 5. What are the top 5 things, top 5 worst things? I don't really want to focus it that way, but top 5 things that would go absolutely bad, that would ruin your finances. Hear me out. Okay, I know it sounds like a dark exercise, but hear me out. List those things out and say, if this happened, this would be terrible. If this happened, this would be terrible. And do that 1 through 5. And then say, for each one of these things, what are the things that I can do to prevent that from happening, and start to prepare to do those things. For example, I'm thinking about, like, my car is relatively older. I paid it in cash, and that's just how I roll. For example, if my car were to break down and I have let's say $10,000 in savings, and it cost me $6,000 to get that car fixed. That would be dumb, right? It's just like that's the whole car, for example. But if that were to happen, why spend half of my savings or more than half of my savings to get the car fixed? Well, wait a minute. If that happened, I spent my cash, most of my cash, to fix my car, and then we're in a recession, that I'm not gonna have. How much am I gonna have left to, pay my rent or mortgage? That's not gonna help, right? I went from 5 months of rent or mortgage down to just 2, just to get my car fixed. That's going to be a bad situation. So to prevent that, I'm going to need to do X, Y, and Z. So perhaps it is getting the car inspected to make sure everything is good. Maybe it's to make sure I got an oil change and good tires, right? And just make sure the car is in a good spot for much cheaper, as opposed to literally riding it until the wheels fall off. Is there something I'm listening to in the car that I know is like, hey, I probably should get this checked out? Or am I just going to ignore the check engine light and just let things just break and get to a much worse position? Those are the things that I'm going to start to pay attention to. Now, I can't tell you what are the worst things that are possibly out there for you. I don't know, right? Everybody's going to have a different situation. But if there are things out there that hey, this is a bad situation or could be a bad situation, take that and invert it and say, hey, this is a terrible situation. Let's flip this and say, what can I do to prevent it or slow it down and not have this hurt me and not have this be a very worse situation? I know it was a terrible way of wording that. But y'all get the point, right? If I know it's out there, how can I flip this and make sure that I can protect myself? Because it was already going to be bad, but in a recession, that impact is absolutely magnified. Because if my car were to break down and it's not a recession, just fine. I got income coming in, the market's up. I got time to rebuild my emergency fund. If it's not, and I absolutely need that money, that's the worst time, because I could lose my income or my income is reduced and now I'm in a dire situation, or my debt is really high and now I'm like, I gotta pay the credit card and my car is broken down, and now things are real tight. When I could have perhaps found a way to have prevented that in advance, but because I wasn't inverting, I didn't list those risks, then it wasn't something I was ready for. Or because I didn't look at the calendar and see what was ahead of me, that I wasn't ready for it. So you want to try and use those things to your advantage. For people who haven't filed their taxes or haven't gotten a tax refund, that could be an opportunity for you as well. Say, hey, look, I'm getting a tax refund. How can I use this to boost my emergency fund or pay off debt? You see what I mean? So these are opportunities for you to perhaps protect or improve your financial position as we may be going into a recession. So later this week, we'll talk more about recessions and whether or not we're going into one, how to define one, so on and so forth. But if you want more on how to invest, how to learn to invest and everything in between, you want to check out these videos right here.